Hello, hello. Welcome to my human design channel. My name is Juji. This is HD by Z. If you're new here, this is a space where I make videos about relationships and the human design system, mostly through celebrity analysis. I also talk about the system itself, and sometimes I interview people I've worked with in the past in order to showcase what human design can do for you. Well, we have a very exciting couple to do analysis for today. This was a recent request and it just lit me up from the inside out. So obviously I had an MG yes, David Bowie and Iman. I definitely wanted to understand what was going on with these two. I mean, I follow Iman on Instagram and she still posts about him, even though he's been gone for quite some time now. And they just seem to have one of those romances for the ages. So I did a little bit of research on them, and obviously I looked at their charts. So excited to share what I've learned. But before we get into all of that, I just want to remind you all that my information to work with me will be in the show notes below in a master link. There's a link to my website where you'll see that I do human design readings, I do couples readings, I do relationship coaching. I have a blog where you can read some of my musings. You can also create your own personal chart or a relationship chart for free on my website. I'll also be dropping some links from articles I recently got published in Elephant Journal about human design and relationships. And the most accessible way to work with me is my online group coaching space called The Beehive. It's for women, where we have weekly Zoom calls. You get access to all my previous workshops, so you can do self-paced human design study. We also have a group Slack where you can ask questions 24/7 and reach me whenever you need. All right, so let's get back to David and Iman. The story goes that his hairdresser set them up on a blind date by inviting both of them to a party that he was having at his house in LA. David showed up in a white Mustang wearing all white. She showed up in a black Mercedes wearing all black. So they were this yin and yang. And apparently it was love at first sight. So, whenever I hear that, I want to know what's going on below the surface. So let's get into their charts right away. All right, this is David Bowie. This is so perfect. He's a manifesting generator. He's sacral authority, single definition, 3-5 profile on the right angle cross of penetration. So even though he's not a projector, he has a very penetrating aura. And I think the thing that really stuck out for me right away was this channel 2343, which we call the genius to freak. And the reason why we call it that, this channel of structuring, is that it's this individual mutative expression, which is very unique to the individual. And if this person is expressing themselves to the right group of people, then they can be hailed as a genius. So for example, some people really love David Bowie's music and other people don't get it. They think he's a freak. Like, why was he wearing those crazy costumes? What was his music all about? Why is he singing about space so much? It really just depends. So he didn't let being called a freak stop him from doing what he wanted to do. And as a result, he became one of the most unique and celebrated artists of his time. But apparently he was also very lonely. So he has this wide open G center, and the G center is always looking for love and direction. And people who have an open G are here to be brought to the correct places by others. It's like waiting at a bus stop, not knowing where you're going. And then when the bus comes by, meaning another person, you get on and you go in that direction and see where it takes you. So in this case, it was David Bowie's hairdresser who was like, I see that you're being extremely reclusive and you're lonely and you're sad, and I think I have the perfect person for you. So he invited him to this party, and alas, that is where he met the love of his life. So let's take a look at Iman. So not surprisingly, Iman is a manifesting generator. She is sacral authority, single definition, a 6-2 profile on the left angle cross of distraction. And if you notice that she has almost all of the same centers defined except for the root center. So there's definitely a recognition here. They're both single definitions, so they're self-contained. They want each other. They don't need each other. They're both MGs with sacral authority, so they know what they want right away. And as a sixth line, she is very aligned to David's third line process, understanding who he is and what he's all about. And then we have this ajna definition. So she has her own way of expressing herself, which is more of a collective storyteller than it is this individual expression. But if she liked his music and appreciated the way that he expressed himself, then she probably felt he was a genius too. So let's take a look at these two together. So this is David and Iman together. They are 7 and 2 work to do, but not surprisingly, they have an electromagnetic connection which defines the ego and the G center. People with open G centers usually seek others with a defined G or ones that define their G. So it's not surprising that they have this channel connecting these two centers together. And aside from that, they have 3 other electromagnetic connections. So that's a lot of sparks in the relationship. But of course, what I was most interested in is whether or not they have a companionship channel, because I've been noticing this pattern emerging. Those people who claim that there was a love at first sight situation tend to have a companionship channel with one another. And in this case, it's the channel of the wavelength. I was reading this article about their first meeting, and they were both saying that it was like talking to somebody they've known their whole lives. They were on the same wavelength together. So this love at first sight story goes that in walks Iman into this dinner party, and David sees her for the first time, and he just says that she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. And I just want to say, I've seen Iman in person. This was like, I want to say almost 20 years ago at this point. She was standing on a street corner waiting for somebody in the fashion district in New York. And she is one of the most incredibly beautiful women I have ever seen in my life. She is luminous. So I absolutely see what David was talking about. But really, it's not about looks. It's about your aura. So we have this idea in our heads that if you're beautiful, then it's easier for you to find love. And I would say it's just as difficult, if not more difficult, because there's a lot more conditioning to get through as this really beautiful person. And David Bowie was surrounded by gorgeous women for many, many years of his career. He probably lost interest in those shallow kinds of things a long time ago. So when he's expressing the fact that he felt that she was really beautiful, I believe he was expressing more that he felt this instant connection with her, and we can see why. So they have this connection from the root to the spleen, which is a very comforting kind of connection, the channel of transformation, the 5432. Then they have another manifesting generator channel together, the 2034, and then the 5720. So they have this integration circuitry connecting the throat, sacral, and the spleen together. So for them, all roads lead to the spleen. It's all about health and compatibility and this real recognition in one another in terms of this wavelength. They're both very talented people. They're both very naturally talented people. And they were talented in different things, but they could respect each other's talent in this case. So this love story is really not just about this love at first sight, but that it had longevity as well. And the story goes that actually he asked her to marry him like 2 months after they first met, and she turned him down. Now, somebody else might really take that personally, but David's a 3-5. So he has more of this like hard shell. He has more of this resilient aura, and he just wasn't going to take no for an answer. He was like, okay, I guess I'll just try again. And the reason why she said no to begin with is because he hadn't met any of her family yet. And this is a woman with the channel of caring, the 5027. So she is a person who is very tribal, even though he's mostly individual and collective. So this tribal channel was like, what are you, crazy? If you haven't met my mom, it's like we don't even know each other, right? And our tribes need to meet. So as soon as the families met, he asked again. She said yes this time. So 2 years after they meet, they get married. A few years after that, they have a child together, and they have a long, beautiful marriage until David passes away, unfortunately. And so she's been single for some time, and she says, I will never remarry. She's like, I still feel married to him. People refer to him as my late husband, but I just refer to him as my husband. He is my life partner, and that's the end of it. I can't see myself being with anyone else. And I just think that's so beautiful and so rare and so amazing. So it's really wonderful to see that even in these Hollywood circumstances that they were able to create this longevity between the two of them. And the 7 and 2 relationship is interesting because it's 7 and 2 work to do, right? So it doesn't mean that everything was rainbows and butterflies all the time. There was still work to be done on the relationship. But because they have these electromagnetics and because they have this companionship together, that was a struggle that they were willing to have. And they didn't see it as a problem necessarily, especially since she used to be a third line and he is a third line. They're used to bumping into stuff. They're used to things being up and down and up and down. It didn't make a difference in whether or not they really loved each other. And I think that's really beautiful. All right, guys, I think that's a really good place to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I'm a big fan of these two, in case you couldn't tell. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Please also nominate any couple that you would like me to do analysis for. I'm thinking about doing the love triangle of Fleetwood Mac next. That's pretty juicy stuff right there. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, ciao for now.